This is Transistor.fm.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Product People Show. Just a heads up, I'm going to be changing the show artwork soon, as well as the name. It's going to be Product People Interviews, I believe, and there will also be a MegaMaker logo on there, trying to create a unified brand. And what I'd like to do is have all of my long-form interviews here, and then over at the MegaMaker podcast, have shorter shows. So this will be the kind of 1 hour show. If you like long interviews, you have a long commute, this is the place. But if you want a shorter 15 to 30 minute show, head over to podcast.megamaker.co. Now, this interview kind of happened by accident. We're doing inside of MegaMaker Club, which is the membership site I've been running since 2013 for independent makers. And every Thursday at 11 a.m., we do these roundtables with experts inside the community and outside the community. We have James Clear coming up in January, but we also have all these amazing people inside of the actual membership site. And Hamish Macpherson is an engineer at Buffer, and he's been a member of the club from pretty close to the beginning, I think around 2013. So we were doing a chat with him. We like to do these profiles on members, and he gave a talk about, his work and his life. And after he was done, people in the community could ask him questions. And I've got a little bit of that here, but I think the more interesting part for you will be what happened when we turned off the cameras, when we weren't live anymore and we were just chatting like friends. And it's kind of like a view inside a private phone call. And I even debated whether I wanted to release this whole thing, but Hamish said he was down for it. And I'm like, man, maybe I should, because I think we talk about a lot of issues that a lot of developers and indie makers and product people and bootstrappers and just creative people on the web struggle with and deal with and think about. So what you're going to hear first is Hamish answering some questions from the community, and then you'll get right into this kind of private conversation we had. Also, if you're listening to this during American Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. I do have a Black Friday sale going on a lot of my courses, up to 65% off. So you can check that out, megamaker.co/Black Friday. And if you're interested in joining the MegaMaker community, the membership site, go to megamaker.co/club. We're not accepting new members right now, but you can join the waiting list there. All right, here we go. Here's Hamish and I. Enjoy. So I've got some questions to get things going here, and then if you have questions in the chat, I think you should ask them. But one thing I liked about your this is it's such a great example of this thing I've been talking about lately, which is the idea of MegaMaker being a community for geeks who make stuff and want to make a better living. And there was like multiple points in your talk where you just communicated that in a very human way. Here I am, and I'm working for this one place rewardly, but it's just not enough, or it's too much stress, or it's not enough money, and you have this hope of wanting to do more, right? And then you're going after it, and there's this, I think one thing you communicated really well is just how stressful that can be. Like at times it can almost feel like you're holding on to a thread of, is this going to work? I'm going to try this thing, but I'm going to get shot down. I'm going to try this and it's not working. What do you think, what helped? Like what helped you keep going? What helped you go, okay, well, I'm going to try this now. And I'm sure in the back of your mind, the one thing you have kind of propelling you is, I've got to provide for my family. I've got to, this is what, and that's both what's kind of driving you forward, but is also the source of your stress. So I just love that you revealed that. And I'm wondering, in retrospect now, what do you think helped?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, there's probably like two things. I think like maybe like number one, like faith, and number two, community. So faith in just like a general sense, but maybe also for me, like a spiritual sense too, right? Like knowing that like things would work out somehow. I'm kind of like optimistic to a fault, right? So I'll just sort of like assume everything's going to be great, even when it's not always, which has definitely been sometimes, unfortunately, a source of stress too, because it's like, I can't remember the exact details, but I think it was like when the conversation happened between my wife and I, where I was like, yeah, so I'm not actually getting paid on time for this job. Like this is in the startup. And she's like, well, how come you haven't told me this? And it's like, well, I kind of figured it would happen eventually, and it just didn't, and that kind of stuff. So, but that, I think in some ways so I've tried to work on the parts of that aren't great. Like you can't just avoid the problem until like, it won't always go away. But yeah, I think, and when I said community, I think too, like having like MegaMaker, it was just kind of like that lifeline, even though like I'll fully admit, like I've never felt like I've really like succeeded in that area. Like I've always wanted to be more of a maker than I think I've been, but but like whenever it came time to like, renew your subscription for MegaMaker, it was like I knew that I wanted to do it because I liked being part of that community. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was like having that was like a reminder that I could get through this, like hearing people's stories, seeing people succeed, even if I wasn't like, living the dream of a solopreneur, like I could still see people doing that. And that somehow made me motivated. And it also like helped me learn like, what did I want? Like there were so many times in my journey that I just had to like stop and be like, what do I want? And my wife would be like, what do you want? Like, what are you trying to do here? Like, what's your goal? And I'd be like, I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to make it, and if there's a lot of those moments, and maybe that showed a bit in this presentation too, but I still think I'm trying to figure that out. Like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm in a great place right now. I'm really happy about it, but there's still like, every day I'm like, am I doing what I want to do? Like, so I don't know. Does that answer the question? I mean, that's kind of...
Yeah, no. And what I like about what you're saying here is it would be great actually for us to do an episode with spouses. Yeah. It would be great and horrible at the same time. If you go out and get a job, it just happens. You get the job and you get paid. That's easy to understand. But the startup stuff takes time. And it's one reason I think I've wanted to switch MegaMaker in a sense from solopreneurs and just to like, we're indie makers, and I just want to help people make better stuff and earn more from what they make. Or maybe just put another way, I want to help geeks have a better life. And so if that meant, I remember you and I chatting a lot when you were applying for Buffer, and I was just encouraging you to say, I know this is going to be hard, like not getting in, but you got to keep trying. It's the persistence that will get you. And when you got that job, I just felt so good for you. I didn't feel like, it felt like a big win. Like here's a geek who's amazing at making stuff and now has this incredible way of earning a living. That just seemed like such a great thing. But anyway, yeah, I think the spouse thing is interesting, right?
Oh no, it's so true. I mean, I think like, I feel like I've gone through stages too, or like maybe I'm just in like a stage right now, like being at Buffer or being just in any like full-time job that is, stable in a sense, right? Like I kind of need that right now. Like I have a coworker who he just sent out like his announcement to Buffer, like, hey, I'm moving on. I'm actually moving to Zeit. I don't know if you know Zeit. They're like they do like automated deployments, like really cool, awesome company. And his note was like, this is like a 1 in a million thing for me, And I thought about that a little bit. I was like, what would I leave Buffer for? Right. Like, cause I really like my job. It's a great job, and I realized like, not that it would never happen, but it's like this coworker of mine, like he doesn't have kids. He's a bit, he's kind of in a position where it's like, and he even mentioned this, like I can leave and not have to worry about as much. Like Zeit's a bit of a smaller company, maybe higher risk, right? Like, anyway, just interesting to think about that, right? Like where I am right now, having the needs that I have, I think it's brought me here. So,
yeah. If you have kids, you have 2 kids now, right?
Yeah.
As soon as you have kids, it changes everything. I'm not sure if I did you see me here? Let me go to my desktop here. I'm just gonna. Oh yeah, Economic Policy Institute Family Budget Calculator. Okay, and this is bare minimum. So, for example, the housing is based on apartments. Food is based on the American Low Cost Food Plan. All this stuff. So let's look up Salt Lake City. And you can do comparisons, right? So let's start with 2 adults, no children. And then let's add a comparison. And then add 2 kids. Look at these numbers. So 2 kids, no children, 48,000. And again, this is bare minimum. Like maybe finding an apartment for $834 is not realistic even anymore. But it at least gives you a range. And just by going up to 2 kids, you're almost double what you need. And if you go up to 4 kids, it's even crazier. And so the context of all this, I think, is important. And you're definitely not the only one that is wrestling with some of that of, how can I do this? And in some ways, it's just the way it is. If you have kids, life's different for you.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I wanted you to address, this was a question I had, was you went from UX and UI to engineer. Why? Well, you explained it a little bit, but there's a lot of questions I have around that. Like, how did you do that? How did you go from being kind of a design guy to an engineer? That seems like a big jump.
Yeah, that's funny. So going back to my early years, my dad got me a copy of Photoshop LE, limited edition, which I don't even does anyone even know what that is? I don't know where it came from, but it's a real thing. It's a real thing. So I kind of, I don't know. I feel like that became a part of my identity. As I'm a designer, but I think what's funny is I don't think I was ever that great. I think I tried, and I think at times I was pretty good, but I think what happened was over time, the more I did work on the web and the more I built stuff, the more I started to like the code. So at first the code was okay, I need the code to get this design. And then it was okay, I can actually do some of the design in code. Okay, that's a bit easier. I guess I'll do that. And now it's I need to build an app. Okay, I have to code now. And just kind of that progression, and then during that sort of period of time where I kind of had to stop working for the startup because they were not able to pay me. And before I worked at Buffer, I took up this job where they're hey, we need an e-commerce store. And the CEO was I want it custom. I don't want anything. I don't want Magento. I don't want Shopify. I want it custom. And at that point, I was pretty competent. And I felt okay, I could build this. But it just really took me from I would say just the basics of website building to this is pretty serious now. I use Laravel, which is awesome, as you know, and I use this whole framework. Then I had to build. It's okay, we need to have a search feature now, and I was how do I do this? And I found out about this thing called Elasticsearch. It's a database indexing. It's this really crazy search system, or not for search only, but often used for search. And I had to learn that. And then at that point, after that project, I looked back and I was shoot, I guess I'm a coder. I maybe I identified that before, but I did so much back end work and systems work and JavaScript work. I was yeah, I guess I really like this. And the design work actually at that job was mostly handled by someone else. So it's just so in some ways it was natural. And I think just, I think this, I saw that I had a strength there. Over time, as I learned more about it, I was I think I'm pretty good at this. And to be fair too, I always have coded to some degree, so I never was only a designer. So it was sort of I always had that T-shaped kind of a little bit of both, but I was trying to pull to the design side and it just didn't click. And then when I started going with the code side, it was oh wow, this is way easier. So that's kind of how it happened.
And do you have, so for someone like me that's trying to learn some programming now, what do you think, what made the difference? Was it having this job that you had to get done that pushed you? Because to me, programming feels it's you go up and up and up, and then you kind of get to the other side where it's okay, now I've got enough of the fundamentals that I can do stuff. I'm in this now. Like you said, now you have this identity of oh, maybe I'm a coder. So do you think it was having that project that just pushed you over the edge, or do you think this was just something was gradually building your whole life? And yeah, like how did that happen? Was it were you in Laracasts every day during this time? Like what pushed you over the edge?
I think there's definitely a certain part of it that's like I had a foundation of like having coded. I think like I don't remember my first language, maybe it was BASIC or whatever, but like, eventually like I learned some JavaScript. But the reason I learned JavaScript in the first place was because I was playing like an online RPG and I wanted to like figure out how long it would take me to level up. So I built this like stupid little page that just for myself that like did the math, like form inputs, like really basic. I'll never forget that. Right. But yeah, I think the necessity, like I wanted something or I needed to make something that helped me get over those humps, like you said. Mm-hmm. And yeah, for sure. Like, I think one thing I realized too was like, if you're learning to design, I always found it hard to find like good resources because it almost felt like it had to be something you had to learn, and almost like you had to have the sight or the vision, and you could just know what good design was. But for coding, I realized really quickly there were just like documentation. You just like read the documentation or watch Laracast or like, or find some resource. And just like over like the period of time where I was doing this transition, like more and more resources were coming out. Like that was probably about the time that Laracast came out, or like when, these sites that taught more coding techniques. So like if I needed to like learn something, there was always like just a wealth of information. Like if the docs weren't good, then there was a YouTube video that would help, and like communities like Stack Overflow that you could go to. So I felt like the community was really good. I don't know if design, and I mean, this is totally speaking naively here, but I feel like design doesn't have that type of community that coding does.
What kind of engineering are you doing at Buffer right now? Is it mostly JavaScript, React? Like what's the day-to-day?
It's mostly JavaScript. So like right now, Buffer right now is at this point where we have a legacy app that is like parts of it were written by Joel, the CEO. Like, and he's definitely not doing coding now, right? Like, but there's still parts of it written by him, and it's like PHP. And then eventually the front end was built into like some backbone, and there was actually some React in it too, as React started to get more popularity in like 2015. But like right now, we realized that just trying to maintain that was really difficult. And so we're doing what I guess most people do is we're doing the rebuild. So we've been doing the rebuild for like over a year now. And we're just we're rebuilding the publish product, which is like the scheduling tool. So it's like, and we're building that like fully with React. So it's a very like lightweight backend, and the whole front end application is like a big React application with like, we have a component library we've been building out. So that's kind of what I do. Lots of JavaScript, ES6, and and then in terms of system stuff, like we have a systems teams that do all like we have all this really cool deployment process. So if I like make a PR on our code base, it like automatically deploys a branch, so I can test that out. It's really cool. They handle all that. And in fact, too, like if you go to buffer.com or github.com/buffer app, you can see all of our GitHub repositories. And the one I work on mostly is actually public. So in spirit of Buffer, like we do a lot of things transparently, so you can see all my PRs and my code that I'm adding. So can share that link later if you're interested. But yeah, it's all pretty much in the open.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Cool. All right, let's get to some of these questions here. Remins Ribeiro. I'm saying that wrong. I'm sorry. But he asks, are you working on any side projects right now or just focusing on Buffer?
This is a great one. So my side project story is so funny because I've kind of been all over the map, including working on some really fun stuff with Justin. And I think like I really enjoyed that, but I've always struggled to like find the balance because it comes back to our conversation about like the needs and like, okay, I need to focus on my work too. So I'm not like letting that slide. And I'm fortunate that Buffer is very supportive. Mm-hmm. Like we have people who continue to work on side projects at Buffer. We have someone who actually just recently left to go like full time with the side project. And it's just like, the culture there is like very supportive if you want to do that. So, but to answer the question right now, I don't have anything like super active. I have had a project on my mind for a long time, but like building an app that teaches coding, and it's kind of like a long-term thing because I never quite pinned down exactly what it is. And I've realized more and more that it's more of an idea than it is like an actual thing. Because every time I sit down to start coding it, I get to like 10% and then I just stop and I hate it. And then it just like crosses repeats like 5 times a year. So right now, funny enough, I have a friend of mine who we kind of are both in this position where we both work full-time jobs, but we kind of like the idea of like, side project stuff. And he and I were like, we should just do something. And we're like, okay, well, let's do a podcast. So we did like the lowest budget podcast possible like a few weeks ago. We just like recorded a call and did it like Google Hangouts Live and just like shared it. And I think, all of like 2 people have probably seen it. I mean, I think I shared it in MegaMaker, but like, so right now, I mean,
yeah,
I can't say that. Yeah, like for me, it's like, I don't expect it to become huge. Like, it's almost just like I need that out. Like, even just doing this is really fun. So like me and him just like chat. We're going to chat, I think, like tomorrow or something again, just to, I don't know. So, but yeah, I don't have anything like really active right now. I get ideas all the time, and I'm trying to be better at like writing them down, because that's how I originally got the idea for my coding teaching app that will one day, I think, become something. But yeah.
I think it comes down to, again, figuring out what you want. And if really what you want is just to feel creative and encouraged because you're doing something that gives you energy, you might be able to do that within like that. You don't need a startup to fill that hole necessarily. So I think there's something to that for sure. Like sometimes it makes sense to just get a really good job, and then you can start a podcast on the side, you can live stream, you can, do whatever else you want to do. If all of these checkboxes are getting checked off, like you're making good money and you're doing interesting work and you're working with good people, and, like for me, it's relationships, purpose, and freedom. And for a long time, going independent was what checked those off. But it doesn't have to be, right? It can be anything. It could be working full time and then being able to do stuff on the side.
I think I felt like what I think about, when I ask the question, like, what do I want? There's lots of things, but like one of the things I felt like is like I want to have a voice, and I think I'm trying to make sure that it's not just like I want to be important. Like it's not like that, like I mean, certainly you want to feel like you're respected, but it's not like that's the only goal. And I think so. One of the reasons speaking was really attractive to me is because I felt like I like to teach. Like I like to teach coding. Like I've really enjoyed like anytime in my job where I help like a junior engineer or something like that. Like that's always really fun for me. So the idea of like getting into speaking more was really exciting to me. And just like having gone to some conferences now, because I work at a company where they have a budget for that. So like I've been to more conferences and seeing people speak, I'm like, this is super cool. And like I could totally do this, like some talks aren't as great. And this is not bashing anyone, right? But like you look and think I could do that, or maybe even do it better. Like I'd love to give that a shot. So yeah, I think like when I think about my side projects and where I am now, I think I may not have like a specific product, but I think I'm almost like building me as a product. Like maybe myself, like I've always wanted to write more and I struggle with that. But I'm like, you know what? If I could just get myself out there, if I can speak a little bit, the two kind of go together. If you're speaking, you're probably writing something. So yeah.
Even you saying, you know what? I want to have a voice. Like having a voice is one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life. And it has benefits that kind of reverberate across your life. So, whether you're working for someone else or doing your own thing or whatever, I think just saying, no, I want to carve out space for independence, for purpose, for relationships. And if I can do that in the context of working a full-time job and going to these conferences or speaking or writing a book or whatever it is, it's worth investing in that regardless, right? Now you've got options. People know who you are. You've established yourself as an expert. You've established yourself as someone who's helping other people. There's just so many benefits to that. So yeah, I totally resonate with that. All right, let's, John Friesen wants to know, how do you manage to stay positive when times are tough?
It's funny. Like when I look back at the times that were tough for me, like, they didn't always feel really tough. I'm trying to like analyze this because I wonder if this is just like my sort of like dumb confidence, like, oh, things will be great. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
But like I will say, we've been fortunate, like our family, like we've never been in the position where it was like, okay, we can't make rent, like we can't eat food, we don't have enough to eat. Like we've never been there, and I'm really grateful for that, you know. But but there were still the times where like I saw myself on that path. Like, well, if things don't get better, we are going to be there, and that's a scary feeling. And I think in those times, like, for me, just doing the work makes me feel better. So like when I feel that stress, like, you know, I just put my head down and do something. It's like, I can't remember what happened. I think after I got like the first rejection from Buffer, and I was really, of course, devastated. I told my wife, and she was, you know, commiserating with me and stuff. And then I just went and like sat down and just like coded for like 6 hours or something like that. Or I don't know, like I just needed like to do something. And then I felt better after that, you know, like I felt like it's okay. I can still do this. Like it's going to work out. So yeah, for me, at least, I think when the reason I got through the hard times was just like by continuing to do things, by trying to create something, you know.
That is one nice thing about being a maker, is that that's in your control. Like when things, and I think we have to be careful because it can be a crutch as well, you know, but there is something, you know, when you are feeling down, there's this idea of, to be honest, like MegaMaker Club, originally JFDI, the whole motivation for that was I came home from work angry one day. And I was like, I got to do something today that matters. And I remember I put up that landing page. I, you know, registered a campfire room and just started reaching out to people. And it just felt like this is within my control. Like this is something, even if I feel like work is a mess and, you know, it's way too slow. We never get anything done. We're not observing what's really going on in the world and then building products for that. MegaMaker and JFDI before it just felt like I saw this need and I was able to act on it, and it was within my control. So the next day when I went back to work, it was like, yeah, I've carved out a little piece of the world for myself here. I've made something that matters, and it helped me deal with, you know, hardship. In this time, it was just like I just felt like work was crazy. Yeah. So, yeah, I think there is something about that.
And I think oftentimes too, when I've built anything like my side projects, I built Stand to Make years ago because I just wanted to do something that, like, I don't know, it was like that same kind of thing. I was probably feeling kind of down, but I realized that what I could control is what I made in that moment, you know. And I just kind of, and yeah, it's funny because when you say that can be a crutch, it's so true, because I think also like I can get kind of manic in those states. Like I'm kind of like, okay, I'm gonna build it, and like I work really long hours, or I'll like kind of just get like distracted, which is why like small projects for me have always been better than long-term ones, because long-term ones I just shut down. Like I just haven't figured that out yet. Like I get to like I said, I get to 10% and I'm just I don't know what to do now. So whereas if I can just like if I can find projects that fit within my like crazy manic 10% state, like I can just get it to the finish line.
It does help, and I think it also helps to know what you want. And I think maybe the mistake I've made in the past is saying the only path to us as a collective the only path to us getting what we want is to quit our jobs and have our own companies, and that's the only way it's going to work. And I've definitely revised that lately, because first of all, starting a company is super, super difficult, and maintaining a company, and, you know, like I have a friend who just started working for Automatic, the WordPress people. And he, right up into, like, he applied, and right up to the time he got accepted, he was like, do I want to do this? Do I want to give up my company? And just in anxiety over it. And then he got the job. And then I talked to him a couple weeks later. I'm like, so, you know, how's it been? He's like, oh my gosh, it feels so good. He's like, I don't even care. He's like, I'm shutting down my corporation as we speak. It just feels so good to not have to manage, like, taxes and GST and, you know, all these things that were always kind of crushing him and a weight on him, he now feels free. So there's all sorts of paths around this. And if, again, what do you want? If you want more purpose in your life, maybe you can get that with work plus more speaking. If you want more relationships in your life, maybe you can get that with work plus MegaMaker plus meetups plus conferences. You know, there's all these ways we can accomplish some of these things. And if you want more freedom, and for me, freedom means money. It means, you know, the ability to work from whatever city I want. It means, you know, there's all sorts of things. But again, their work could check off some of those things for you. Now, I also understand the feeling of being like, eventually I've got to own my own thing. And I think, you know, that might fit into purpose or whatever, but we've got time too. Like when our kids are in their 20s, we will have so much more time and energy and and money, and like there's time in the future to do things. And so I think sometimes the rush of feeling like I got to get it done now. It's like, no, well, maybe don't throw it all away for something that, you know, might not check a lot of those boxes that you actually want.
It's hard to think about that sometimes because I'm so much in the weeds with my kids right now, right? Like you said earlier, like when you have kids, it changes things. And then I left my house the other day. I was driving and I just drove past my neighbor and he was like outside, like waxing his car. And I just had the thought, like, I would never have the time to do that. Like I would never be able to like justify that to like anyone, myself or, you know, like I'm just going to go spend like an hour or two to wax my car. But if you use that like analogy, like in the future, like, you'll have time to wax the car. You'll have time to kind of like maybe. So that perspective is really helpful for me too. Like not trying to think so short term, like, well, if I don't get like a big speaking gig in like 6 months, then I must be a failure, you know, like that kind of mindset, like, and not that I don't want to move myself to have like goals and stuff, but I've just felt like when I try to attach myself to like, you're only successful if this happens, that's never productive. So.
Yeah. There's this tension between giving yourself a push, which is no, try to get a gig, like try to get a speaking gig. But they're too far down that path is, if I don't get paid $5,000, my next speaking gig, I'm a failure. Like, or in 2019, I must speak in front of 1,000 people. Realistically, you can go, okay, well, you know, what can I control? I can control how many speaking applications I fill out. I can control how many times, like, there's always like meetups and co-working spaces and buffer brown bag lunch talks or whatever. You know, how many of those do I speak at? Jason Charnes said last week, you know, I apply like 10, 20 times and I get one speaking engagement. So, folks, if you want to ask Hamish more questions about how to get a job at Buffer, how to get a remote job, how to go jump from UI to being an engineer, I feel free to reach out to him in Slack. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for showing up. Everyone's just giving you tons of nice things in the YouTube chat.
Thanks,
here.
everyone.
So, thanks everybody, and we will see you next time. Next Thursday. We've got Adam Wavin next Thursday, same time, 11 a.m. And I'll see you folks then. Bye.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. Yeah. It's just good. It feels good to be like, it's kind of raw too. It's like, this is who I am, you know, or like, just, this is what's hard, especially like the conversations where it's like, this is what's hard, right? Versus like, well, I don't know. It's, I'll listen to a podcast about someone's success story and that's fun, but it's like, what's that book? It's Derek Sivers, I think, right? The whole CD Baby story too. Like that one, it's just like this meteoric rise and like, you're like, oh, I could do that. But it's like, so, you know.
Yeah. The funny thing is like, because he talks a little bit about that. He talks a little bit about being a struggling artist and like pouring his life into music. But all anyone remembers is CD Baby.
True, yeah.
And I think, I mean, maybe I do this too much, but for me, there's also just like this realism of, yeah, he started CD Baby, but it's very likely that Derek Sivers in the same position in 2018 would not be a success. Yeah. Like, there's all of these things that have to fall into place, and right time, right place, and yeah, he built this thing. It's awesome, but nowadays you could not build a shopping cart widget for music and succeed, right? And maybe we just don't know. Like, we don't know if maybe Derek Sivers in 2018 just gets involved in a different thing and still wins, but there's no way to split test reality. We just don't know. And so I think what's been more helpful for me is hearing people's real life stories and then just thinking about my story and going, mine is just going to be nothing like that. And there's a tension between making excuses too. Like I could just say, well, it's just never going to be like that for me. Right. Or I could say, okay, this is just my life. Like, this is what I've been given. And what am I going to do about it? Like, at the end of the day, all I can do is do something about it. And, part of me is like, well, hopefully they have a community around them that at least helps them get a leg up, because it's pretty hard to always just be pulling up your bootstraps. But on the other hand, I think there is something about, okay, well, this is my position. I'm 38 years old. It's 2018, almost 2019. What am I going to do about it? And
what
then
can
just
you
going
do?
from there.
Right? Like, you look at your options, and that's kind of like what I felt like too lately is just, even in just like starting this, and I say this for like, I started a podcast in the sense that like I recorded a thing and put it live. Like, it's very, very informal, but like that like me and my friend were like, let's just do the thing. And it was kind of funny because we both kind of talked about it. And it was great because he was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's actually just do it. And so we did it, and like, I don't know. I just, it's so funny. There's so many ways, it intersects with so many different ideas in my head. But like I said in the chat, like, I've always really liked MegaMaker because it's been a place, and I think you've done a great job with this, just building this community where like no one, like, I don't ever feel like I am like excluded. I'm not always like super active, but I don't feel excluded because I don't have like an indie side project that's like topping Product Hunt. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like that. It's like very like there's lots of good real talk and it's almost like I get this feeling like it's waiting for me. Like, if I do, the next time I build something, it's right there. Like, that's where I'll go first, right? Like, and I like knowing that too. Because if I was on my own, I'd feel like, okay, I have a thing now, but like, where do I go? Like, okay, I'll go on Twitter and like, I'll ping some people and see what happens. But it's like having that there has always been nice. So.
Yeah. Well, that's encouraging for sure. I think I always think about like all of these geeks out there that like making stuff with computers, and some of them have jobs, some of them are freelancing, some of them are, building their own companies, but for them to all feel like MegaMaker's a place that they can go, and certainly like, oh yeah, I'm going to build something. So this is, like you said, I love that's what you think of. But I also would just want it to be a place where people can be like, man, I just like making stuff. I want to get better at this. And if you're looking for a better job, I want you to be able to find it there.
So now I'm in this space of Buffer where like I feel like I can grow, and I have grown. Like, I've advanced. Like, we have a career framework. I've advanced a little bit in that. And I guess I bring this whole up because like I could be spending like my time just getting the work done, but then really focusing on this external, like, outside Buffer stuff. But the stuff I do in Buffer can also lead to like, like promotions that make me feel good, not just in the money sense. Like, it's certainly more money is helpful, but like, just like, oh, I got promoted, I feel more like validated. And that's kind of like, I think what a lot of people do when they work for themselves too. They're trying to build that company. They want to have that, like, want to have a voice. They want to put something out there. And I still get that even in the internal side. So yeah, it's interesting, the balance there. So that's been as I've been working at Buffer, that's always been the struggle too, because I can like, again, the job's so flexible. I could take like that hour in my afternoon to like work on a side project, or I could take it to just do a little bit extra work at Buffer in some way that like is, you know, impactful there. And it's actually hard to find that balance. Yeah,
helps
exactly.
you level up.
Like,
yeah. One thing I've realized about bootstrapping Transistor is that there's very few people that succeed at bootstrapping the way I'm doing it right now, which is they had another little thing and then they start a software company and then they just manage to make it work as a one-man shop. Like the software company on the side grows. Almost everybody, Jason Fried, DHH, you know, you just go down the list of bootstrapping heroes. They almost all either had a full-time job that was paying the bills while they bootstrapped, or they were in their 20s, single, and moved to somewhere cheap. Or, you know, so like Mike McDermott at FreshBooks moved into his parents' house for 3 years, right? It's like, fuck, I'm not going to do that, right? And so I'm looking at this realistically and going, and it's been a really hard year, and thinking, okay, well, what are my options? And so it's like, okay, well, and the part that was stopping me was my ego and, you know, other things going, well, I can't go and get a job. Like that would be, ugh. But I'm realizing that like if Transistor is going to have success, it's all about increasing your runway. What are ways we can increase our runway? Okay, well, I could like really like just shut down all my other stuff and just focus on consulting like crazy and just try to get a bunch of good clients and do that. That is also pretty hard. It's like starting another business so I can run my other business. We could get investment, or I could get a job. And so I've just started being open to, the fourth option is for me to really make MegaMaker sustainable in some sort of way. And it's the same kind of tension that you felt when you're like, do I do this? Do I do this? There's like, you can't see which one's gonna work. And so really the only option is to explore as many options as you have, and then choose one that seems good. So I've got a job interview on December 8th. And I was like, I'm not doing this. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I got to be open to things. And, you know, maybe it'd be a great fit. Like maybe they'll pay me a bunch of money and I can grow Transistor on the side. It's hard working through all that stuff, but what's helped has been a little bit of like, what do I want? And, you know, sometimes I wonder, because right when I was about to go independent in 2016, Nathan Barry contacted me and said, you know, hey, I heard Sprintly is closing down. Do you want to come get ConvertKit? And I was like, Nathan, I'm just about to go independent. Like, I can't do this now. And who knows how that would have worked out? Maybe that would have been better. Maybe it wouldn't have been better. You never know. But I think there's something about all of this that, like, you can only do what you can do. And
well, and I just get the feeling, we can do so much too. That's the thing that's always fascinating about this industry.
Yes.
Like, if your job even like touches tech, you just have like this Pandora's box of like so many things you can do. Like, I have friends who are electricians, and like they can be electricians, and that's it. There's no like, oh, I'm going to specialize in like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I could be speaking naively here, but I feel like you can't really pivot very far on that. But it's like, if you're in tech, you can learn to code, you can learn to design, you can consult, you can, you know, like.
I think that is such a good
it's overwhelming.
point.
Like it's like, and it's been cool to see, like, to watch your kind of journey from the outside too, because I think like yeah, like you have almost like you could like go many different ways. You know what I mean? Like it's so interesting. Like and like being at Buffer, like one of the things Buffer's trying to do is like become the future of work. So like we're obviously trying to make enough money to sustain ourselves as a business, but like, there's this whole like part of the company that's like, what does the future of work look like? You know? So I don't know. I mean, that's like that doesn't have to mean that you come to Buffer, but I think that any company, I think the future of companies is something like that where we like. It sounds very like hippy dippy, but like, you know, just like having this like culture of like of that, because I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. Like that you articulated it so well. Cause like my friends don't understand my problems at all. Like for them, they're just like, unless they're entrepreneurial, cause then you kind of feel like, oh, I could go this way or this way or this way. But you're right. Like tech gives us this, in some ways, awful constant paradox of and FOMO all the time of going, I could stay or I could go do this and look at that person and look at what they're doing and look at that success. And you have this. It's like I'm constantly in 10 parallel universes going. You know, well, if I'd gone that way,
where would I be now? Yeah,
I could have. And it's like a road riddled with regret. Like I have a friend who was basically at the first the first World Wide Web Consortium meeting, and I mean, and he's had a great career in tech. Like he worked for Alta Vista, he worked for Yahoo, he's worked for Apple. Like he's had an awesome, run, but stuck in his head is that first consortium meeting. It was like nobody was there, and he said like out of that, like if you chose the wrong, he kind of has this feeling like if you chose the wrong people to have lunch with back then, it was the difference between becoming a millionaire or a billionaire or just being a working schmuck your whole life. And he thinks about it all the time. He's always like, ugh, like he's like, he remembers being at this one thing and he's like, there's this one table and he just remembers going, I wonder if I should like go and see what they're doing. Like he wasn't really invited, but feeling like I should just get myself in there, but he didn't. And that ended up being Mozilla and Mark Andreessen and all those guys. And he's just like, he thinks about that all the time. Just like, shit, like, what if I just pushed myself in? Clearly, I mean, you can't think like that, but I think there's always this time, like you could leave Buffer and then, the next year they get acquired by Google and all the employees are now millionaires. And then you're like, why did I do that? Yeah. There's these tensions all the time. And you're right. Like this is a very, in some ways it's nice to hear it because then it's like, well, okay, you have an abundance of options, right? And some people just have no options. So just be thankful you've got options, you dummy. Like that. And maybe you choose wrong every single time, but at least you got that many. Like some people get one at bat. It's like they go to school, they choose a trade, and they just hope that trade
works out for
the rest of their life. And in our case, it's like we get so many at bats that, even if you decide to stay in the same career your whole life, just knowing that there's recruiters asking you, hey, you want to work for us? You want to work for us? It's like, that's a lot of opportunity. And
it's so true. Yeah, it's so true. I think like I've never been to school. Like these people spent like 8 years of their life in school, and like they make more money than I do. But the fact is, like I live down the street from them, kind of thing. It's like I'm not like across the highway. It's just like this weird feeling of like, how did I get this? Like, oh yeah, I live in this world in this time when this is possible.
That is such a good way of looking at it because there's some gratitude in there. And like if I look at my life, like I should be ruined, quitting that when I'm 28 years old which is like really your 20s are when you, even to this day, like if you don't establish yourself in your 20s, it is like, it's a big step back. And so I remember I'm almost 30 and I'm looking around and going, nobody wants to hire me. And I applied at the Apple store, you know, and I got turned down. And I was just like, what is, I'm ruined. Like I'm never going to, and then I get one phone call and then I'm working for a software company. And then all of a sudden I've got options again. Like that's incredible. And there is, I think, some gratitude of like, oh, geez, Justin, that's so sad that you have, that you're sad that you might have to go and get a job.
Yeah, the perspective.
Like, way to go, Hamish. You're so sad. You have a great remote job. You get to sit in your house, you know. But it's perspective, because the options, and maybe these options won't last forever. Like maybe you hit 58 and then everyone's like, I'm not hiring a 58-year-old right now. Like maybe your options run out.
We don't know what happens then. Yeah, we're so young in this industry. It feels like, you know, like.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of looking at it. Of the gratitude of saying, okay, you've got a bunch of options.
Well, I think it's like there's like tiers. So like you get to this point where you are like, you can take care of yourself and your family and your needs and all that, and like you're happy there. But then like these other things surface. So like, you know, like for example, like my wife and I have been like focused more on like our mental health lately. You know, like we have like she has like a therapist like she's seen, which is like kind of like a thing you can do when you have like the means to do that, and you can actually think about those problems, like because that's a big thing, like taking care of your like mental health or like, you know, your physical health. Like we've been working out more like over the last like year, and that's been good. Like, but those things like didn't happen when I was younger, and like I just wanted to like have a way to make ends meet, and like I couldn't think about that kind of stuff, you know, like so you can afford to have that like I want more, because maybe it's bad in the sense of, in the moral sense bad, but you know what I mean? But it just feels like you have to get to that point before that can happen.
I think this is why it's important to have gratitude and then to not throw away the good stuff. I mean, in retrospect, like I just wanted to be independent so bad that I think I needed to experience that regardless. But in retrospect, it's like, man, I could have gone and worked for Nathan and kept MegaMaker going and kept marketing for developers going, and it would have probably been better, you know? I think this idea of like, okay, this is good, but what's missing? Okay, well, what's missing is this. Now, I could throw everything away and just pursue this, or I could keep what I have and just level up in over here. Especially if, I think one of the things I felt before is I felt constrained. But if you are not as constrained anymore, if you're like, no, I have a lot of freedom. I could just go and start speaking, or I could just go and start writing a book. Yeah, the constraint of not being able to move is gone. It's like, oh wait, I actually have movement here. But why not just stay here and, you know, go do something else? But there is tension to that, because like sometimes you do got to give everything up, and so knowing when to do that is hard.
I'm seeing in my mind like there's like the manifesto of a maker, you know, and like I don't think it would say you have to leave, you have to work only for yourself, you know. I don't think it would be that strict, you know. I think it would somehow capture all the things we're talking about here, where it's like your situation is your own, and being a maker is like about finding that path for yourself where you're able to create in that world that it's the space that you own. It's your life, it's your family, it's your needs, your wants. And like, you know, it's so individually tailored. And then it almost begs the question of like, why do we even all talk about it anyway if we can't relate to anyone? But somehow there's a part of it that connects all of us where we're like, yeah, like I can see that, or I get that. And you know, some people can relate more than others, but like, it somehow has like, we somehow have nothing we can relate on, but we have everything we can relate on somehow at the same time, you know?
Well, and maybe what you're identifying is that we sometimes attach meaning to something that isn't even necessarily what we're going after. So we see people starting startups and we say, oh, well, that's the way that you become completely fulfilled as someone who likes to make things
Right.
with computers. But maybe not. Like maybe it's just like, no, I can still be fulfilled. I can still be someone who likes to make things with computers. I can even be someone who makes things for the public and makes things for the public and makes money from them, but without having to start a company, because you might start a company and be like, man, I wish I hadn't done this. This is a nightmare. I think that's the danger of saying, that's what I want. I want to be that person who owns the startup. But when you really look down the list of everything that entails, it's like, maybe I don't want that. Maybe I just want to be like Kent Dodds.
Oh, I freaking love
Kent.
that dude. Yeah.
Kent seems to love working at PayPal. And he's just like, I just happy working at PayPal, but he gets to make courses and sell them and be active in the JavaScript community. And he's completely fulfilled, And in some ways, it's even better. It's like PayPal more than takes care of his needs. PayPal more than takes care of his desire for purpose and for learning new things and for making work that matters. And then on the other side, he gets to engage with the community. He gets to have his cake and eat it too. Again, I don't think there's that many great companies to work for, but
totally.
If you're in that position where there's a great company and you're working for them, maybe it's just like, okay, my bases are set and I'm going to go do this other thing on the side that I really have no pressure or expectation for it to become my next big thing. I might have to cut some of this up, like release this as a podcast, because I feel like in our after chat here, we've kind of nailed some stuff that is a lot of folks could resonate with.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. That'd be sweet.
So there you go, a little bit of Thanksgiving holiday listening. If you enjoyed that or you want to reach out, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm the letter M, the letter I, Justin, M-I, Justin. And Hamish is HamStu, H-A-M-S-T-U. And if you're listening to this before Cyber Monday, go check out megamaker.co/Black Friday. And also, if you want to join the membership site that we were talking about, megamaker.co/club is the place to sign up for the waiting list. Podcast hosting is provided by Transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.